Duncan Hemba, KTN News.
Since the COVID-19 pandemic hit Kenya, job losses and pay cuts have been experienced in all sectors of the economy. Now, the media industry has not been left out either, with around 300 journalists already rendered jobless, a number expected to increase in the coming days. We now want to have a conversation on the way forward for the media industry. Joining me via Zoom is Maina Mwiruri, the chairman of the Media Council of Kenya. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us here on News Center, and good morning. Now, what is the state of the media in general from where you sit?
Good morning. My name is Maina Mwiruri. I'm the chairman of the Media Council of Kenya. I would say since COVID was confirmed in Kenya on March 13, things that have happened to the media are unprecedented, especially mainstream media, not just the small media outlets. Media houses have undergone strenuous times, especially financially, worldwide, not just in Kenya. For the first time, we've had companies laying off in a massive way. Media has been laying off staff in a big way. We estimate it's more than 300. At least 400 journalists are said to have lost their jobs. Some lost their income completely. Others have had reduced income by way of media houses paying salaries that are reduced in percentage. And this is besides the exposure to COVID-19 that journalists have been going through countrywide, covering this pandemic. It's a difficult time for media. It's a time that calls for serious thinking of the way forward and mitigation by organizations like ours, who can try to guide through these turbulent times.
Then these pre-existing challenges that have just been worsened by COVID-19, or this is something that has just popped up because of COVID-19?
Some have been exacerbated by COVID-19, but without COVID-19, it's safe to say that media could have coped through. Like without COVID-19, we may never have had salary cuts, but retrenchments had been going on. Media houses had been cutting down on budgets, and media houses had been struggling against the wave brought about by digital competition. Now add COVID-19 to that, and the situation has become dire. We've had media houses, well, at least one media house has cut their entire staff by half. One media house has reduced salaries by half. Even the biggest have reduced their salaries. Small radio stations, we call them community radio stations, have closed down completely. Small online organizations that had started have closed down completely. So COVID-19 made a bad situation worse. It's dire, and we don't even know whether we are halfway yet. We do not know what will happen at the end of this. It's a whole situation that is calling for a lot of rethinking and deciding how to move forward.
Coming from the Media Council, of course, as you've mentioned, this is a very dire situation, so much uncertainty. So then how do we salvage the fourth estate?
I'll speak from a point of view of the Media House of Kenya. For the last 3 months or so, most of the work that has been done by many organizations have been firefighting or trying to keep media from drowning. The journalist is a core of the media. From the Media Council of Kenya, we've tried very hard to keep the journalists breathing. We've been first holding instructional seminars. Now we are calling them webinars, training journalists on how to cope. We've been having them weekly with our partner organizations. For instance, the AMWIC, Association of Media House Women in Kenya. We support these organizations to do webinars to teach journalists how to cope at such a time as this. That is just instruction, not the money. On money, many journalists have been kicked out and they've no income. We've teamed up with partners who have helped us to put some money into the pockets of journalists in exchange for doing COVID health stories. Last month, we supported 100 journalists. This month, we are supporting another 120. It's still a drop in the ocean, but it touches something. The lowest of the correspondents are given some money to cope. Last month, again, we rolled out a program supported by the government to assist radio stations that had shut down. We dished out government money, 120 million, to about 150 radio stations, media organizations like Kenya Correspondents Association, AMWIC, media organizations that reach down to journalists were supported with that money to try to reach down and help them to reopen, stay alive. Nearly all that was supported have reopened. Some have managed to pay even quarter salaries to keep the journalists working. For the big media houses, we have waived subscription fees, not much, amounting to just about 15 million. And we continue with the webinars, training media houses and journalists on how to cope through this crisis. It's a crisis of world magnitude. No one knows the end. And it's affecting even the best in the United States, Britain, everywhere. You can know now how it hits a third world country like ours.
You mentioned that there's support for some, journalists, but as you have mentioned, again, it is just a drop in the ocean. What happens to the rest?
The big media houses, it is hoped they will pull through to the other end of the tunnel, but still to a lot of bruising to journalists, because when big media houses suffer financially, it's down completely the journalists who will suffer. Many will have to be laid off. And retrenchment is legal, but what we are trying to train the media, to tell the media houses is, even if you have to retrench, do it in the most humane way possible, not just kicking out people who worked for 20 years, 25 years. Remove them in a humane way so they may have some little cushion to start on their own. Individual journalists, we are training them in webinars that you can make it on your own, even in a small way. It's so widespread in Europe through creativity, innovation. Many will manage to survive on their own in a little way, not as good as it was when they were in employment. And for big media houses, we are appealing to government to give a hand at such a time as this. Government owes big media houses money through advertising. There would be no better time than this to try to pay up. There are funds that are committed to COVID. Media has been discussing something called the Media Development Fund. If it can be activated at such a time as this, it will help some big media houses. Help, not wait, not get them out of the crunch. Maybe the crunch will come out later when this reopening happens, and maybe nobody knows what the end of this virus.
What lessons do you think the industry can learn from this pandemic going forward?
Going forward, it struck worse than a lightning. Nobody was ready. Nobody knew when that lockdown started that it will mean locking down the very source of income for the media. Media, it's something that is being learned on the run, on the job as it's happening. Out of this, media will learn to, not just media, many companies, to have contingency plans that could help survival in the short term. One of the things we've seen happening in media is innovation. We'll have to grow with hard times through innovation. I've seen all the mainstream newspapers teaming up with the biggest mobile company, Safaricom, to sell your newspapers online, because it's very difficult now to sell in the traffic jams the same way you used to sell. And such kind of sale is keeping you well-read, reaching out to the population, and the population is managing to buy it cheaper. That's just one example. Media houses have also come out showing that they've discovered the traditional way of running media may not be the way to go in the future. You've seen many of them now expanding their digital departments. That will be the way of the future, because it's even minus COVID, there is a lot of competition now from digital media. Innovation will be the way to go in the future. and putting up plans that can help media houses survive if such crisis hit in the future.
All right. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us here on News Center. A good place to end this conversation. We need to diversify the industry. That is Maina Mururi, the chairman of the Media Council of Kenya. All right. That's how we wrap things up for our first part of News Center. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Ashley Mazuri. More news at the top of the hour.